Howdy folks, I figured I'd give you a demo about how to work with this starter file that we've given you. So I'll go over how to work with the swatches that are here, how to use these sample type swatches here once you've got them finalized to create actual type styles. And then for those of you who are also beginning to work with grid work, we'll look over at these artboards that may or may not be in your file. If you're not working with the grid yet, you may not have these in your files. But for those that do, we'll show you how to work with those as well. Okay, so this is your standard style tile. And what I've set up here for you is the color swatches. And the way that these work is that you should be able to click on these. And if you can't right away click onto the color swatch, you can double click a few times until you see the swatch item open up here. You can also just hold Command or Control and click right into the middle of that colored area, and that should take you right into it. The idea here is that you can choose a base color and see the tints and shades around that color. So this should make it easier for you to choose a color as well as see that you have variations of that color readily available. Now, these are actually just layovers of semi-transparent black and white tiles. So when you actually want to use these, you may be in a place where you have a rectangle and you would actually want to come over here and use this eyedropper tool to go and just plain sample the color that you want to use out of that. So right there I have the actual value that is there in that little portion. Okay. The imagery area is something you can fill in with images from the site or project that you're working on. These are just placeholders. You can adjust or do anything you want in this middle area, as well as expand it to show more things than that are just here, but it's there as that placeholder for you. Now when we get down into the type, remember that the number one thing, well, I guess there's two main things that we're looking for. Number one is hierarchy, so that you have a clear visual hierarchy from your body copy up through each successive level. And so you're going to adjust these to use the fonts and other styles that you want to use for your project, while keeping in mind that you want to have that clear visual hierarchy. I would recommend you typically keep these three, the body copy, the list, and the hyperlinks, all the same font size, and only really vary your font size up in these heading levels. Notice that you can do anything you'd like there, but once you have those settled, let me show you how to create a text style so that you can easily apply these to any document or any element in your document. So select the element, or even better, go in and actually select a portion of the text that you want to create a style from. And then over here in the text panel, you can pull this little thingy out and click the plus and then name the style. So sometimes it's helpful to use some organization. So at least you could call it, body style. But just to be clear, you could also go type / body. You could put anything you want here, really. But note that when you use a / it's like sort of creating a little folder that Figma will recognize. So it's a way of basically organizing this set of styles. So you could even go like, this is my base type, and it's the body style that's inside of that folder. So the idea is that if you want to ever create like a different set of styles, you can create new variations, but then also keep them organized. Just to keep it simple, I'm just going to name the style like that. So we create style. Now the list here may basically be applying that same style with just a little bit of variation. So what I'm going to do is now drop this down and choose body to apply that style. And notice that what happened is I ended up with more space between my items than I wanted. So if I ever want to kind of break this away from using that style, what I have to do, you notice that a lot of those settings tucked away. What I have to do is use this unlock icon to detach the styles. It at least keeps them there so that I can easily go in here and say, you know what, I don't want the 20 spaces after. Maybe I only want 10 pixels after. Okay, so this is no longer married to my body copy style. That little demonstration may have been mostly fruitful to show you how you can apply a style somewhere else. But now let's create a new style off of this, and we'll call it list. Okay, so we have a body style, we have a list style. Now, note that, I should say, when you want to vary color, that is something that is not fixed into the style. It only fixes sort of the core things like size, leading, space between, and other things like that. So I should be able to come on here and choose body, and notice that a few of the settings may have changed just in terms of spacing, so I can just drag it back down to bring it back into alignment. But it is otherwise now using the actual body copy style, but just using the blue color, so I can see that hyperlink effectively applied. Okay, so we can do the same thing for each of these levels. Maybe this is my heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. If you know me, you know that I typically will make my site name my H1. So this may be my H2, H3, and H4 in my markup, but so I could still call it whatever I want here and know that, when I apply it in the document is different from what actual markup I might use in my actual HTML. So we'll call this heading 1. We'll call this heading 2. And we'll call this heading 3. All right, so now I basically have these styles as something that I can easily apply while I'm designing later on in the process, and that is super helpful. So I wouldn't worry about doing all of that until you're further along and you've finished your style tile and you're happy with it, because anytime that you make a change here, so let me just give you an example. Now I've got 3 different paragraph boxes that are all using the body paragraph style, right? They've all got body applied there. Well, if I decide that I want that core style to change, remember that what I have to actually do is come in here and click on this settings panel and change that setting. So notice that that is applying everywhere that we see this body paragraph applied. Actually, I realized that it may not have applied everywhere to the whole block. It only applied to that one little that bit that I had selected there, so that was an oops. But now it's applied to the whole block, and we can see that it did change everywhere I want. So I'm not sure I want to have to worry about that until I'm far enough along that I've settled these styles. So all that to say, don't worry about doing your styles until you sort of have approval of your style tiles and you know that you're good to carry forward. All right, there we go. All right, so there's a demo of how you can set up your type and your colors. Now, for those of you who have these tiles related to the grid, let's switch over here and talk about these. So this is following Koivin's method from Ordering Disorder, which we cover in Web 2. Some of you may be at that point in that course. So notice that I've put in this bit at the top here where you can put in the specs that you've chosen to work with. You are always welcome to use this base set. I think it's a good solid starter set, but note that it's not really the best fit for every set of type. And the key is what you're doing for your actual baseline grid. If you change your baseline grid or want to use something else here, then the whole system should be reconsidered, particularly what you're doing with the golden ratio line and the rows. Okay, but if you're going to work with a grid system like that, let me show you how you can use the grid features here in Figma to set up some guides to help you with this. All right, so I've got this sample grid frame here, and so that's always a good idea anytime you want to use a grid to actually create a frame first that's at generally the right size. So this is just an arbitrary height, which is what we typically want to assume is going to be the case in the web. But we can nonetheless demonstrate our grid. So here's what I would recommend. You're going to add 3 on this little layout grid panel here. You're going to add 3 grids. The first one is going to stay at this sort of pixel grid, and it's going to represent your baseline. So you click on this and set this to match your baseline. In my case, that's 20 pixels. Okay, there we go. There's that one. Next one is going to be my columns. And what I would recommend you do is set the number of columns you want first, but switch to the center option. And then so it's drawing me 12 columns, and it's putting them in the center of my frame here. And so now I get to choose how wide my columns are. Okay, so I'm typically going to try to align my column size to my actual the baseline grid that's being drawn there, and you can see as I do how that pans out. The other thing I want to adjust though is my gutter before I get too far along, and notice that I had a 40 pixel gutter. So with 12 columns and a 40 pixel gutter, if I want to fit all of those columns on the page and stay at an even number, it looks like 60 is what I want to use. Note that you can, make this any arbitrary number you'd like, but I have tried to stick with something that aligns with my actual grid so that I have that neatness, neat appearance as I'm drawing. And this also really just kind of centers around what gutter you want and what you need to make that fit. If you have a real arbitrary gutter, then you may need a strange value for your width here. Okay, notice that the other thing that I've done here is I've left basically 1/2 of the gutter on each side, so that you imagine a column ends up being the combination of that middle area and the gutter, and so it should be 100 pixels wide, and we can fit 12 of these all the way across, and it works out evenly. Okay, so those are the two of the three. The last one here we can set to rows. And with this one, we're going to match what we have stated here, that we want 3 rows per our golden ratio line. Okay, so our golden ratio line, you can see we set at 720. So let me draw a guide for where that 720 line is. All right, so there's my 720 line. And if I go back to my grid settings, you can see then, we'll go in here and we'll say, I really don't care. Actually, yeah, we'll keep it here at first. So we're going to set it to 3 for first. And see, right now what it's doing is it's stretching to put 3 rows on this artboard. I don't want it to do that. I want it to start from the top. And now I see it's got those 3 up there. And I'm going to leave my gutter at 1 baseline. And so now the height is basically going to be my 240 minus that 1 baseline. So it should be 220. Okay, so what you get then is that a 240 block is the combination of the pink area plus 1 little gutter in between. Okay, so you can see that we get 3 of those neatly inside of that golden ratio line. Okay, once you have done this the first time where you set that up so that it's lining up with your golden ratio line, then I would recommend that you switch this to auto. And what that means is it's going to now continue to repeat that basic setting of 220 plus a 20 pixel gutter for as tall as your canvas is. So for when you have a canvas that goes a lot further down, you'll get that consistent row treatment all the way down your canvas. Okay, so that's what we want to do on this sample grid, so that we're demonstrating the grid that we have in mind. You want to make sure that matches. Now, just like we did with type, we can also set up a style so we can quickly apply this grid to any of our frames in the future. All you need to do is come over here and click the this guy that pulls out the styles panel, and then click the plus, and then name your style, and then click create style. So all that to say, now we have colors set up. Oh, I should show you how to do colors. I should have mentioned that earlier. You can also do color styles. So I recommend you do this at least for the colors you intend to use most often. So here I'm going to click on this one, and you can see I've got the fill shown. So if I click on this little panel that pulls out my colors, I can click to add a new one, and I might call it base teal. Okay, so now it's created a category called base, and it's put the teal color in that, and you can see as I hover over it that I see it. All right, so we can go on here and we can add this one, base purple, and add base blue. Okay, and I'm gonna add base, oops, I did the wrong thing. Add a style here, base, and I'm just gonna call this body. Okay, these are just placeholders, so I could actually delete these if this was an actual document I was trying to go with. So those are at least my 4 main colors, but it wouldn't hurt to also grab these variations. Remember again though that what I need to do is draw a rectangle, sample the color. Okay, so here's what I often do. You don't have to do this, but it's something that can help. If you imagine a scale, the primary color in the middle could be considered a 5 out of 10, and then the tints can go higher, so 6, 7, 8, 9, and then the shades can go lower, 4, 3, 2, 1. And what we often do is code those by hundreds. So this base color would be 500, 600, 700, 800, 900, and then this would be 400, 300, 200, 100. So full white would be 1000, full black would be 0, something like that. Okay, so as I name this, let me just make sure I know which swatch I sampled from. So this was 500, 400, 300, 200. So if I'm going to use this one, I've sampled it, there it is. Now I can add it in, and what did I call it, a 200? So here we're going to go base teal 200. Okay, so now you can see that color name. I can even drag it over. Oops, I think you can drag it over. I'll have to look into that another time. But now you can see we've got that color saved. So if I now break, you can see that that color is still there. I could now use this same thing to go sample another color. So let's say I'm going to use the, what would this be? You know what? I called that 200, didn't I? That was supposed to be 800. This is supposed to be the 200. Okay, so we need to go edit that other one that I had. So here we go. We need to edit the style and call it 800. Okay, so this one here is going to be a new one. I'm going to click add, base, teal, oops, 200. Okay, so you can see now I have some variations of my teal that I can use for in my design. Okay, so styles for colors, styles for text, and styles for grid. These are all helpful. What all this means is that you can now switch over to your pages where we're going to do our responsive mockups. If you have this sort of setup, you may not in your particular project, that's okay. And we can create an artboard or frame, and maybe we're going to have it at 1200. 4000 pixels is plenty tall. Go a little smaller. All right, and now if I want to apply my grid, all I need to do is go down here to grid, click on the styles, and click basic grid, and there you can see it. So now, as I lay out text on here, I could come in and put a text box, lorem ipsum, dolorsit. Command 0 zooms to the 100% zoom, by the way. And we can come up here and make this text be our heading 1. And then I'm just going to make sure that it's aligned to my baseline, and I'm good to go. Now I could do, a heading 2 somewhere in here. And I just want to make sure that it's aligned to my baseline. And that's just visually. I'm just visually checking it against that. Okay, it snaps a little bit, but you always just want to zoom in to get it. Okay, so you can use this grid to help you lay things out if you want to drag in an image or create a tile for like a product or something like that. Maybe your image is going to be that big, and then you're going to have a like a heading 3 type level below it. Just align to the grid, whatever looks good. You can make it centered. Okay, you can see how we can begin to use this grid to quickly lay things out. Okay, very cool. Good luck.